So welcome to another episode of Couch Conversations, and I've really been looking forward to this coming conversation because I've frankly known Mathias and Johan for quite some time. So I'm really happy to meet you two guys. So Mathias, the CEO of Doconomy, and Johan from the farm. So even though for those of you who have obviously followed our awards, you definitely haven't met Doconomy before, but I'm actually really happy to see that again you have been doing some amazing work in a space that I think is so needed, especially within climate change. So but for those of you who don't know this piece of work, maybe one of you would love to just give a short introduction. What is this work about? And congratulations with winning the Goodvertising Awards.
Thank you, Thomas. I think, Johan, you might want to walk through the idea behind the 2030 calculator.
Right. So Doconomy, that's the backstory is that Doconomy started with measuring the climate impact connected to transactions, credit card transactions, and that creates an average. So that's a really good starting point for a consumer to understand their carbon footprint connected to consumption. But we always knew that we needed to start looking at product level calculations. So the 2030 calculator is a platform that allows brands to calculate a product's carbon footprint. And it's very important for us, obviously, because the data is essential to present to consumers in order for them to have a more granular picture of their carbon footprint. But it's also a way to start democratizing the ability to carbon label products, which is a very important part of having consumers compare products based on impact. So that's the short story.
And I think that was one of the things that really, when we were judging, that did impress us, the democratization of that data, because obviously, how are we ever going to live more climate friendly if we don't know how, most of us, how much of a climate pig we are? We can't really cut down on that. But one thing I want to dig into, in fact, is because you've been part of, as I said, and won an award a couple of years ago as well. And I think a lot of agencies these days, are looking to create more of this stuff, are looking to create impact. And, what I've always been impressed by is the journey that you have been on. Now I introduced Mathias as the CEO of Doconomy, but not too long ago, you were working in an agency as well, in fact. And so to create change, it's hard work, but it seems like you came from an idea from an agency side to actually now have a running business. So maybe could you share a little bit about that journey? Because in a time where we all talk about how we need to move from being people who just do ideas to actually change things.
It's all on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
Day one.
That's how to do it.
Perfect. Yeah, take me through that. Take me through that diagram.
No, but I think it's a very important question that you put, Thomas, because to a large extent, the trajectory of our society and the planet as it is now needs a new narrative. We need something to agree upon, to cling to deliver to, and to hope for. And me and Johan, we've been working together for, I don't know, 25 years or so, working out of advertising, communication strategy, service design kind of perspective. And I think maybe 10 years ago, we started working around innovation as a driver of communication, or deserved communication, solving problems rather than creating communication. So the problem solving got attention in its own right. And coming from the background of the advertising industry, I think it's a brilliant opportunity, because we can both we can both illustrate the end game and the desired next state and tell the story on how to get there. And for me, working in advertising and then moving over as we built Doconomy together as a front runner in climate impact metrics or provider of climate impact metrics, it's been tough for other reasons, because all of a sudden it's building a business, setting up an organization around that, ever expanding, rapidly growing, there's challenges around that. But that's why it feels so good that time after time being reminded, like first we did the transaction-based calculations, and now being more granular on product level with the 2030 calculator being product-based. It all comes out of the same ambition to tell the story, to illustrate the end game, and to engage people in contributing on how to get there.
So do you think we as an industry sort of need to change our perspective? You talk about, focusing on solutions. Yet again, I think a key part of what you've done, both with obviously Doconomy and the 2030 calculator, there's a big piece of the storytelling that I think that you guys have solved in such a beautifully intuitive, easy way.
Yeah, I think that there is, the Doconomy is one thing, and the 2030 calculator is also something we're very proud of course, and we're just getting to see the rapid expansion of that in providing people with data substantiated insights to actually drive a change of behavior. But we almost always apply the same kind of rationale and thinking around our work, and I personally felt quite foreign from the advertising industry all of my career, being inspired by other things and being inspired amongst other things by the project Johan did with the Humanium Metal Initiative, which is another example, but coming out of the same idea, solving a problem rather than just communicating around it and hoping for someone else to pick up on it. And the Natalia project we did together as well. So that was also where it pretty much started, where you can see that if you engage many through partnerships for great reach, and you team up with people that are very well familiar with the problem and learn from them for a long period of time, you get to come up with solutions rather than communications. And I think that if that's relevant to all of the advertising industry, I wouldn't know. But I think I can only speak on a personal level. I think otherwise I would have done something completely different by now. Traditional advertising, I've done that for years, and that was fun at the time. But I think what we see now is we need to use our skill sets and our talents to address other challenges than just pushing the next shampoo.
But I think if I could add to that, I think consumption will undergo a tremendous change, right? Which will then influence brands and the type of advertising they do. But I think going back to what you said I think sometimes advertising is very reactive. It has this reactive sense that, okay, so here we have a product, now let's figure out how to sell it, And I think innovation work is a proactive type of work. So, and I think that corresponds well to the ambition with the 2030 calculator. It's proactive. It's actually creating a solution for brands to perform calculations that will then become a carbon labeling strategy, consumer-facing information that will influence their purchase decision. So I think that proactive mindset is very, it's to the core of how we work and how we look at the world, basically. And I think when it comes to climate change, it's such a big problem. So innovation is essential, I think, to make sure that we get to solutions fast and create tangible tools for people. Yeah.
I think that proactivity, for me at least, also kind of shows how this landscape is changing, and the fact that brands can't be, reactive anymore. I think a big part of what you're doing in terms of the democratization of this is, in fact, that you actually enable each and every one of us. You put it on our shoulders, in fact, to say,
Yeah.
you can change your consumption. If you care about the climate, you can do something tomorrow. And I think that sort of reciprocity between brands and people, this sort of, saying, it's not transactional, it's sort of transformational. If you have a brand that I buy into, now I can be part of that dialogue. And I think the 2030 calculator, I think, is a brilliant step in terms of creating a sort of new collaboration and hopefully a new way of looking at consumption. And so one of the things I'm obviously curious about is which is one of the key things when judging the award, is obviously scalability. So could you talk a little bit about how the 2030 calculator has been received, and do you think the mainstream brands are ready for this? Are we gonna see this in the Gap stores of tomorrow, or the Marks and Spencers? Is this a new way of shopping where you actually know the footprint of products?
I can start maybe. I think that when you do innovation, there's never a way to know how it's going to be received. It's just, that's part of the challenge, So investing investing time in trying to create an innovation, it will always have that problem with not exactly knowing how it will be received, right? But I think we've talked to a lot of brands. I mean, we've had long conversations with over 50 brands, and different sizes of brands in different industries and categories. And there's a clear sense that some of the bigger brands, they have already made a lot of investments in sustainability, so they're slightly reluctant to accept this innovation as it is, because it's meant to be simple, fast, and free to use. So that's one indication. On the other hand, some of the bigger brands are helping us a lot with looking at our data sets, providing a lot of very important insights and so on. So we have great hope that some of the brands, the bigger brands, will actually join us in this effort. But the good thing about this is the smaller and medium-sized brands. It's never been easier to convince any of them to start using this tool, because it's been missing for so long. If you look at the costs and the complexity connected to performing an LCA calculation, it's impossible for a smaller brand to afford it. So I think that it's an interesting observation to see that the smaller brands will jump on this opportunity, because they have nothing to lose. If they can perform a calculation that proves that they have a lower impact on average compared to a bigger brand, that's a great opportunity. And it could even be so that they have an opportunity to prove that a higher price level is actually defendable in terms of a lower impact score. But to finish off, I would say that some brands are simply won't do it because they know that they have unsustainable production and very high impact. But that's part of the game as well. And not everyone will jump on making sure that their consumers understand the impact.
But I also think that it's every brand that we have been in contact that has reached out to us, and some are already live with the calculations, providing the consumers with and their users with this data, which is the end game, is of course to help the user, the consumer, to understand the impact pre-purchase. Every brand has been extremely curious to find out how they can use it, how they can contribute. But to Johan's point, some brands have a larger sort of defense mechanism around sustainability, and that also always happens. So it's nothing to be concerned with, really, because once you challenge, when you rock the boat, you challenge the status quo, there will obviously be a few people that go like, no, but we liked it better than before. Yeah, but no one cared before. So why would that be a good place to be? We want for every consumer to understand the impact of the products that they choose, so that you can steer the hand on the shelf from high impact, negative impact, lower impact, and by doing that, creating a competitive edge for the brands that want to step up to this responsibility and provide transparency. And also to Johan's point, I think it's easier for small and medium-sized companies to be closer to that decision because they're not challenging the current state of things within the company. They're looking to provide new data to their users. And coming back to Thomas, some of the work that you've done and that has inspired us in this journey as well is like, who can you help me become? You know, not what do you want to sell to me?
Yeah.
What can you help me do? And how can you provide to me in that space as a brand? Because brands today are power. And if they can direct that power for good or only for profit. And I think if they don't choose to direct it for good in educating their consumers, they will be out the window the next generation, no doubt.
If I also, one thing that people should understand with the 2030 calculator is that it has the capacity to do pre-production calculations. So that's something we didn't add in the case when we, but the fact is that a lot of brands are using it, calculating the impact before a product is produced. So that's a really interesting, talking about scalability, that's a very interesting opportunity actually. We spoke to a brand and they talked about the realization that just switching from one material to another, this is a furniture brand, they calculated that shift was, you know, the first material that they decided on had 10 times as much impact as what they actually then decided to pick. So it's pretty dramatic, you know, and it will have impact because of that.
And I think definitely, I think from a design perspective, in fact, there will probably be a lot of designers here watching this. You know, we know that we need to start with designing products differently than we do today, which is also part of kind of how we're supposed to kind of close the loop and obviously cut down on carbon emissions. But I do think that this kind of thing about proactivity, reactivity, about fear, and about kind of grasping the unknown and actually go for innovation, I think it's something that, you know, as a creative person and you're sitting there in your office and you're like, oh, should I dare to bring this idea to the client? I mean, because basically, you know, oftentimes as agencies, you know, you're stuck at the brief, you know, you know, you have this campaign that you need to solve, you have this kind of thing. Do you have any good advice in terms of that? I mean, how do you deal with that fear of the unknown? How do you go about having, you know, the guts to go and say to a client, you know, here's not your next campaign, you know, here's an innovation, trust us. I mean, how, and any good advice there?
I mean, Mathias and I, and especially Mathias actually, from a strategic, I mean, if you start with a strategic kind of framework for it. And I think we were kind of understanding that, okay, purpose, you know, it's going to be about purpose. It's going to be about a brand's ability to respond to a bigger challenge, a global problem, or a way for them to prove positive effect on society. Okay, so if you want to pitch a big idea, you have to kind of show the brand that they're aligning with something much bigger in terms of purpose. So when we discovered this 10 years ago, it you know, made us confident that, hey, there's always a chance that we could present big ideas as long as we have that component of proving that it aligns with a greater purpose and still connected to business, the business side of things. So
yeah, and I think that the business, one of the most brilliant cases you can, I'm sure you have it at Goodvertising as well, is the Humanium Metal Initiative, because what it does is it takes the creative edge. You know, do you want to spend your life, back to your question, you want to spend your life making ads, or do you want to do something bigger and ask the question, what if? So in order to do so, the most efficient way to succeed in that is connecting it to a business model. So take Humanium, the business model around Humanium is, to me, giving the creative opportunity away to anyone else fuels the business model, reinstating a new kind of perspective on funding an organization with a very important assignment in regard of illegal firearms. So creativity can have an output in so many different ways. And if you let a brief frame your ambition, then you're going to get stuck at why should you buy this? Why should you use this? Well, look at this thing. This is why, or this message. Or if you can take a step back and just look at it, what if? And that's some of the perspectives that I think is.
Yeah, and I think brands are in the end just vehicles. All on the index. I think it's really about that. When you worked on all on the index with the realization of, hey, the credit card is a vehicle. The bank is the bank can facilitate change. And once you introduce them to this opportunity, you should always remember they will go back to their families and their kids and say, hey, I'm onto something. I'm part of change here. You think of me as a conservative banker, but I can actually show you that the credit card and my bank can be part of a bigger picture, something that contributes to positive change. And you should never underestimate that. And I think that's why, obviously the work that you're doing, but if you look at Cannes Lions, it's an excellent opportunity to show off projects and initiatives where brands can prove that they are part of this change, and so I would say there's never been a better opportunity to get brands on board, but you have to stay away from the brief. You have to point towards the stars,
No,
I think you have in this conversation you touched on some pretty crucial aspects in terms of saying, solve the problem, take a look at the bigger picture. What's the brand's role in society? How do you actually really solve things? And a key point I think that a lot of people always forget in this space is the entrepreneurial side of it, because sustainability is also about a sustainable business model. And so thinking like an entrepreneur, I think, is a key thing that a lot of people can take away from this call as well, because what I always admired by you two guys' work is it's not just good ideas, it's in fact great business. And with that great business comes great impact. So it's been incredibly inspiring as usual to have you two share your thoughts and ideas with our community, and in so many ways. And the whiteboard, I'm sure, do some freeze frames, things of that. Can we just see one inspiring thing? What is that guy? Is that a footballer, a soccer player up there?
I don't know. Straight. Oh, lovely. Yeah. All our secrets.
Kolster on the backfield. No, so thank you so much and congratulations again with winning the award. And I'm sure that this is probably not going to be the last time we see you guys, you brilliant minds. And for the rest of you out there, you can obviously follow the Goodvertising Awards and what's happening on the Goodvertising community at goodvertising.com. And we will be sharing more couch conversations. Thank you, Johan, and thank you, Mathias, and congratulations for winning the Goodvertising Awards 2020.
Thank you, Thomas.